We are Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here from SEC Media Days, where we watch Eli Drinkwitz speak. Let's start here. Is Eli Drinkwitz a robot? Is he
Look,
one of us?
here's why we're laughing, okay? So I was there, but I left right before he started speaking because again, we had some internet issues and somebody had to get our stuff uploaded on the channel. So I didn't get to hear this in person, but I got the quote sheet for him. And you said this on our LSU video because we were talking about AI, and Brian Kelly was asked about AI and its impact on college football. And Brian Kelly, surprisingly enough, I didn't think he would say anything, but he actually had some pretty in-depth thoughts on using it moving forward. Meanwhile, Mr. Drinkwitz here, Coach Drinkwitz, his entire quote, I can give it to you, Chris, in 3 seconds. I have no thoughts on AI in college football. The end. That was it. He didn't say anything else. I'm stunned by that. I don't know why. I thought he would be someone that would have really in-depth thoughts on AI in college football. So
At that point, I think somebody should pull the Terminator and gone up and tried to slit his bicep and see what was underneath, but there was no cutting to be. Anyways,
that was the most
accounts
disappointing part of the day. So there you go.
But if you're wondering why the smiles and the smirks to start the broadcast, that was it. But in all seriousness, he did have, I thought, an interesting take. And one thing that we dwelled on in our preview of Missouri was how many dudes these guys have coming back, Blake, especially on defense. And he kind of joked about, he didn't use the word filibuster, but he joked about, I'll talk a lot so that way you guys have got less time to answer questions and I won't get myself in trouble, which I thought was kind of funny. And he said it good-naturedly. But he did bring up exactly what we spent a lot of our time talking about when we previewed Missouri, and that's that they've got so much returning experience. And let me just give you some things that he said. 18 returning starters, and he pointed to retention at this point of the college football era, how that's a big thing. And I agree with him. I think that is going to be a big thing because the more I looked at this team on paper and studied it off season, I liked it more. He said they've got 32 players with 4 or more Division I starts. That's amazing. I don't know if there's any team in the country that's got that. He talked about returning all 5 of their defensive tackles. You heard the tackle stat mentioned a lot. He would say this guy's got over 100 career tackles or that guy's got over 100 career tackles. And he mentioned that at just about every position group. I think the thing that Eli Drinkwitz wanted us to hear today, if we didn't hear anything else, and it was hard not to, was they've got a lot of dudes coming back, and they're very happy about them.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the production. Like you said, I'm looking at it here and just kind of made some notes on what he said, even though I wasn't there. But like that, I mean, you just go down the names, right? We did that in our preview. We talked about all the names they have on defense and all the combined production, whether it's Hopper, whether it's, Abrams Drain, whether it's Rakestraw, whether it's all these other guys that we talked about. And yeah, I mean, we said, man, it's, people are going to look at defenses in the SEC, and obviously they're going to start with teams like Georgia and, Alabama and teams like that. But man, you look at this defense for Missouri, and I think it is one of the most fascinating out there because we talked about what an impact that could have on them, going into the season. And, and he talked about too, I think it was what defensive edge was the position he said, talking about maybe the biggest question marks, but felt like he was starting, they had answered that now. In terms of being able to figure out exactly what they need on that side or in that particular position. So, yeah, I mean, you said it, they got a lot of dudes on defense, and having that depth and knowing the grind of the SEC, right? You're going to have injuries. That's part of the game. And I think just having so many options at their disposal on defense, that is undoubtedly the main theme. And that was definitely, like you said, sort of the main theme of what he was talking about today. That was clearly the high point, I think, just looking at the team and where it's at. And that's not surprising at all to us because we talked about it for probably 20 minutes in our preview video.
Yeah, and he talked about Darius Robinson's ability to play on the edge being a big thing too. He did talk about sometimes coaches just kind of volunteer what their concerns are. And he said they've got to get better on the offensive line. Now he mentioned that Delgado and Foster, and I spent some time with Javon Foster, impressive kid. He said those guys have got 28 starts each in their career, but he said they've got to protect the passer better than they did a year ago.
Yeah, and I know, too, he mentioned Brady Cook, right, talking about sort of the competition and those sort of things. And I think that's – we talked about the offensive line. We said kind of with the running game, too, right? It was a solid running game, but if they wanted to advance the offense, that was also another area where just advancing the offensive line and getting it where they needed to be will help them in a lot of areas because, I mean, I think we all agree. And I think, Chris, you may have the notes and I'm trying to find it, but I think he was asked about Luther Burden and sort of just the way they're going to use him, in the slot and those kind of things. And obviously, I think that'll be the most dynamic part of their offense. And I think we all agree on that. But I think it's just, again, having that offensive line in place that can put everyone in position, whether it's the quarterback, the star wide receiver, the running back group, and all those things. It all starts there on the line. And so that will have a big impact on everybody else, as we know.
Yeah, and he was honest about a lot of things. Again, the blocking was one thing I came back to. He talked about the quarterback room. Brady Cook came up a lot, but he talked about Sam Horn and Jake Garcia, who had played each other in the Georgia State title game. And Horn was kind of an interesting topic. He talked about him a good bit because he was asked. He talked about how the confidence from baseball he feels like is going to help in football. He talked about the first time I think he pitched in college. And I remember seeing that game he threw against TCU, which was a team that made the quarterfinals of the College World Series. And Sam Horn was out there blowing 95, 96 in February against the Horned Frogs and looked really good. He talked about how that carried over to his game. Another thing he talked about, and I know this is what I meant to circle back to, was Luther Burden. He did not duck the issue that Dominic Lovett, a guy that's going to be really missed in this offense.
Oh, yeah.
He said putting Burden in the slot is going to, I guess, be a better fit for his skill set. But he mentioned Dominic Lovett several times, talked about how good a player was and how much he would be helping. He didn't mention the school by name, but of course it's Georgia. I thought that was very interesting. That was another very honest assessment of his offense, not just the offensive line and needing to get the blocking better, but he didn't duck punches when it came to Dominic Lovett.
Oh, here's the exact quote, and I just found this because I know he had mentioned talking about the receiver group itself, but he said, "I think the wide receiver room is the area that we have to improve on the most, just because the amount of talent and depth that we have there, and those guys have got to be key contributors." And obviously, again, that's coming off of a season where you have Lovett and now you don't. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that combination, right? We've talked about Burden a lot, but they are using him in a different spot, but there are also other guys that have to step up to be able to kind of match that production that they're losing with someone like Lovett. So yeah, the combination of the wide receiver group, the offensive line, quarterback position. I mean, I think we still have questions just about, what's it going to look like from game one to game whatever. And so, yeah, I mean, I think again, Chris, we're kind of repeating what we said in the preview, and it's not surprising that that's where Eli Drinkwitz went, because I think it was all kind of a consensus on these were the things that everybody's been talking about for months now. You know what you have on defense, and it's just trying to figure out exactly what your offense is going to look like. And, those are questions that I don't think are going to be answered until, game one and beyond. So
we'll have video clips up of various Missouri players from Media Day when we get those uploaded. Blake, with that on the way out, any parting thoughts on the Missouri Tigers and what Eli Drinkwitz said today?
Hit that subscribe button. Like you said, we got interviews going up with players and all sorts of people. We'll have media members. We'll be talking to a lot of those this week in Nashville. So check everything out. I know, just as usual, you guys know, usually we put our stuff up in the mornings on our videos, but these are probably going to be more afternoon, evening type videos you'll see at SEC Media Day. It just gives us time to upload everything and kind of get as much as we can during the day. So we appreciate your support as always. And Chris, you almost forgot. We're at the end of this video. I've not contractually said the two words that I have to say in every Missouri video, but no, I've not seen Dennis Gates this week in Nashville, but have no fear. The Fighting Dennis Gateses will be playing, I don't know, Chris, in about 4 months now, something like that, less than 4 months before basketball season. So not that long away, Missouri fans. So there you go.
How could I forget?
Mm-hmm.
All right. He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14. Thanks for watching. Tell a friend, and we'll see you soon with more SEC content.